Hello students, this video is about how you can work your way through assignment number 4. Assignment number 4 has to do with the flight reservation and cancellation system. We have done the emergency menu, which involves how a pilot sitting in the aircraft can actually use the menu options to navigate his or way out of certain difficult situations. So that's with regard to the aircraft. The second part of the airport application, which was your assignment 3, emergency was assignment 2, and this one was about the flight status reporter. The flight status reporter was written specifically for passengers who were, for example, in the airport, and they could get updated information about the arrival time and departure time of flights. This part of the airport application, which is your assignment 4, has to do with giving passengers the ability to cancel, to reserve, and to display seats in an aircraft. And of course, the airline officials can use it as well. So I'm going to call it seat reservation and cancellation. Now, we are going to take a very small aircraft, so we are going to assume that this aircraft has got this is the aircraft inside, and it's got 7 seats, so 7 rows and 4 columns. So basically this means it's got only 28 seats, and they're going to be numbered from 1 through 7, and this is going to be A through D. So A1 is going to be this seat, and then D1 is going to be this seat, and so on and so forth. So this application also gives us skill building on how to do 2-dimensional arrays in C++, and at the same time, there are lots of other skill building that you will be able to do as you move along. Some of the skills, by now you're already familiar with how to use a menu application and how to do input choice. And as usual, you are going to be given a template that you can use to fill in code so that you can complete some functions, and also to use some boilerplate code that is very familiar to you and that you have used before. So let me run this application. And here you see, when I ran this application, this comes up and says seat reservation and cancellation menu. The options are to display, to reserve, to cancel, and to quit. So let's go ahead and do display. If I do D, then the seat chart comes up. And so it's numbered 1 through 7, A to D, and some seats, your program, your template will already have filled in certain seats for you, just to make sure that, it's a little more exciting. All right, so let me try to reserve a seat. As you can see, some seats have already been booked. So for example, 1D is already reserved, and the reserved seats are marked with the X. The seats that are available are marked with a blank space. So we can see that some seats are still available. But let me go ahead and try to reserve a seat. And then it says, please enter the row number 1 through 7. So I'm going to say, can you please try row 1, and then let me try D. It did not like the 11, so let me go back again and say I would like 1 and then D. Now when I do that, it says sorry, that seat is not available, because as you saw, 1D was already taken. So let me try to reserve another seat and say, how about 1A, and now it says, congratulations, your seat is confirmed. Let's see if that has happened. And as you can see, 1A is now reserved and it's no longer available. Let's try to now cancel a seat. And it says, enter the row number. I'm going to try to cancel my 1D, not the one that I just booked, but 1D. And now now it says your seat has been canceled. I press display, and as you can see, 1D is no longer available. Let's see what happens if I try to cancel a seat that's not. Try to cancel 1D again. And then it should say, sorry, that seat has not been booked. So that seat was vacant anyway, so you cannot cancel a vacant seat. So this is the scope and sequence of the reservation and cancellation and display options. Now I'd like to walk you through the execution chart of functions, and then we'll go into the template. So this is how the template has been designed. You have, as we are used to by now, the main program has one single app button or one single function call called seat reservations cancellation menu. Now, the indentation means that these functions that are under it and indented under it are the ones that get called by the seat reservation cancellation menu. So the first thing that happens is the database is created and a menu option, the menu option that we saw is displayed. User input is taken and returned to the program. And then depending on what the user has entered, either has entered an R, we go into reserve seats, or has entered D, we go into display seats, go into C, go into cancel seat. What happens if you do reserve seats? Then it gets a seat information called get info, verify, check availability, and display message. So what actually happens, it gets the seat information from the user asking for the row and column. So seat position verifies that this is a valid seat. For example, the user could have entered -1 or -99 or 1000. And we know that we're only constrained by row number 1 through 7 and columns A to D. So here's where the verification is done. And if this goes through, then it checks to see if that seat is available or not. So if you're reserving and that seat is already reserved, then obviously you cannot re-reserve, double book that seat. So that's what check availability does. And if that seat is available, it's going to go ahead, mark it with an X to say that I have reserved the seat and display the message accordingly. And there's the same thing for the other options as well. Now I'd like to walk you through the template to show you that here's the main program, and here is the single call, and all of the function headers that you saw in the execution chart are given right here. You can just use it. I'd like to point your attention to constants that I've used here. That is for the number of rows and for the number of columns. Now, you may remember that when we use array notation, then the indexing is going to go from 0 to 6, and the number of columns is 4, and the user is going to enter A, B, C, or D, the character A, B, C, or D, and somehow we're going to have to translate A to 0, B to 1, C to 2, and D to 3. And when you look into your template, you see that that's actually been done by subtracting that character. So CH minus A, and we know that that there's an ASCII representation of each character, and the ASCII representation of the uppercase character A is 65. So if the user enters 65, 65 minus 65 is going to be 0. So that's how the mapping from the character to the numbers, to the column numbers in the two-dimensional matrix is going to, two-dimensional table is going to work out. So that's with regard to the header. So here's the template, and this is the main seat reservation cancellation menu. So the first thing that happens is creating the database and declaring the database, number 1 here, which is the database is just a two-dimensional array called seats, which is 7 by 4, and that gets passed into this function. Now please remember that when we pass arrays, either one-dimensional or two-dimensional, they get passed by reference, which means the address gets passed. So we don't need to return the arrays. They already get changed or manipulated inside the method into which they've been passed. So create database has the perfect liberty to make changes to the seats, and then those changes are going to be reflected or visible all the way here, because this is the database that gets passed into reserve seats and the other methods. So that's with regard to the database. It's a small, tiny little mock database, but even if our array was very big, well, that's exactly the way it would work. And so wherever it says do not change in the template, this is code that's available for you to use exactly like previous assignments. And all you need to do is just use it as it is. Now, these are the three methods that you're going to have to complete, the three functions: the reserve seats, cancel seats, and display seats, and some of the helper functions that that these functions are going to use. So let's go up to reserve seat, for example. So here, for example, I'm going to say complete this function, and what you will need to do is follow the instructions here given in the comments. So call the get seat information function, and in order to know what the get seat information function needs, you will just need to take a look into your header file and say, oh, I see the where is this get seat information? Why is this not here? The get seat information function is right here. I'm going to put it into the header. For some reason, I did not see it inside the header. So I'm going to put it here. And as you can see, you will know that you need to pass the row and the column. Now, know that the row and column are also passed by ref, because some changes that are made to these numbers you might need to use in the calling function. So here the get seat information function is given to you. All you need to do is make sure that you call this function. Here you go. Call this to get the information from the user. So here's one function call you need to add. Then another function call is going to be to validate. So call the verify function. And then you can go into the header and see where the verify function is. That again, I'm going to add it to the header right here. So then you can see the reason why they're not in the header is because they're already written completely for you, but I'm just going to put them into the header in any case. So as you can see, this verify takes in a row and column and returns a Boolean to let us know if the row and the column are valid numbers or not. And this has been written for us. So all we need to do here is basically call these methods and make sure we pass the parameters correctly, and we make sure we use the results of these function calls correctly. And all the algorithm is given for you here. Call check availability, check and see if that particular position is marked with X or a blank, and take decisions accordingly. So if it's available, then we can go ahead and reserve it, set it to X, and display congratulations. Otherwise, say it's not available. And this is what you need to say if, for example, if your verify method returns a false, saying that the user has entered 99 and G, then obviously that's not a valid number. So the number of functions that you need to write are this reserve seat, that's number 1, cancel seat, that's number 2, check availability, that's 3, and that's pretty much it. So you need to write 3 methods, and that will complete your assignment 4.